Welcome to Alchemy with Bronwyn, a podcast dedicated to helping you live an inspired, heart-centered life by cultivating energetic mastery. We delve deep into how to organize our life force around what matters most. I'm your host, Bronwyn Isla, board-certified acupuncturist, mama, dancer, and practitioner on the path of illumination. So we're kind of cruising through this chi node, this 2-week period of little heat, almost finished on the 21st on the full moon. Have you all been feeling the intensity of the summer energy kind of turning a little bit more I don't know, robust is the right word, but kind of, strong. I feel like every time I go into the garden, like I go there every single day and I'm like, what happened? It's like a completely different thing. Like everything's flourishing so quickly. The rate at which everything is blooming is kind of phenomenal. So this is that flourishing of the yin that's stored from the winter, that the yang is pushing into form and pushing into this massive amounts of plant material and energetic capacity for huge amounts of growth. Are people feeling that in their lives? This kind of like less tired, maybe more energy moving through the system, more capacity to stay up a little bit later and kind of move in the current of it all. Do you feel it? Yeah. Mm. So this is the time we're seeing this even more and more in our political field, this yang qi going really, really out there. It's kind of amazing to watch it from this lens of malignant yang and just kind of how these yang forces are vying for power right now and pulling out all of their yang qi, all of this like very strong masculine energy to try to vie for power. I want to touch a little bit today on appetite and what is our appetite. And my teacher Lu Ming would talk a lot about how having an appetite that's not calibrated is ghost-like behavior. And this is the appetite that includes, like, we really want to make sure we have a healthy appetite, and also the appetite that tells us when to stop eating, or like when to release and stop doing something. So appetite in this context isn't just about being hungry. It's also about knowing when you're not hungry and being able to listen to that. And we can think about that in terms of food, but it's not only food, right? It's like how much we stay out and keep doing something, or when we stop talking, or when we put the phone down, or when we go inward. How much appetite we have for exercising, whatever it is, like kind of this moderation of amount and quantity. And there's a lot of instruction during this chi node about that if we tune into it in that way, rather than kind of going with this only the rampant growth energy, but also kind of tuning into our capacity to release and soften and tune inward. It's kind of amazing to think that autumn is beginning in a month? No, it's 3 weeks, August 3rd. August, yeah. That's kind of amazing. That's only 2 weeks. It's like, how did that happen? Was that summer, really? Did that already happen? So it's about not needing an alarm necessarily, this idea of appetite, of when to wake up, when to go for a walk, when to turn off the computer, but just letting like a force inside of us keep the time, keep the clock, keep the momentum of knowing when to slow down, when to speed up, which is kind of a lot of what I feel like we've lost a bit in terms of a highly technologized. What's the word? Can we make that a word? technologized environment where I think it does really uh, mess with our subtle intelligence of knowing when to stop. It's like, oh, set an alarm. Like I tell people, I think every week, set an alarm, go 55 minutes and then set an alarm, get off your computer, stretch for 5 minutes, drink water, do whatever the thing is, like everyone's like, yeah, oh yeah, drink water. Let's drink some water. It's a good idea. Let's all drink water. Great instructional. Water. That's also like a kind of someone told me recently that that's actually a kind of anorexia that we can have where we limit how much water we drink. It's like people are considering adding that into one of the pathologies of just like when we don't want to drink water, which in Chinese medicine we would consider it a large amount of damp. Because if we have a lot of damp in our bodies, then we're not thirsty a lot, even though we still need the water. But I just thought that was interesting thing that therapists are playing around with this idea of like, what is it when we just don't drink water? Like we know we're thirsty, but something in us doesn't reach for the drink or make the time to drink the water. In Chinese medicine, another way we talk about that is called bai he bi, which is like a lily bulb syndrome. Bai he is lily, and bai he bi is syndrome. And the lily bulb syndrome is a kind of yin deficiency. It's this kind of yin deficiency where we get so dried out from the yang or the excess heat that instead of it's like you can imagine it like a kind of leathery quality that comes on the skin. Specifically, it affects the lungs so that we're no longer able to even absorb the moisture. I know I'm digressing a bit from what we're talking about, but I think it's related. So this bai he bi comes in and we can get that way also in terms of our emotions, right? Where it's like we have a hard time absorbing the love, hard time absorbing nourishment, hard time absorbing water, hard time reaching for the nourishment, reaching for what's actually most helpful for us. So it's a kind of state of confusion when we need alarms. Did you guys hear my alarm right now going off? Oh wait, I have an alarm. It's not an alarm, it's a phone call, but it's just really funny that it happened right in that moment. Like on cue, curated by the universe and impeccable timing. Like when is it that we need something to remind us to eat, to remind us to drink water, remind us to like, have you seen those water things where it tells you like 1 hour, like 12, 1, 2, like it tells you exactly you have this like a X amount of water, and then it tells you like each hour how much water you're supposed to have drunk. My niece has one of those. I just think it's really interesting that we're like trying to find how we can figure out how to know when to drink, when to eat, when to stop, when to go, when to stretch. And we need all these outside cues. Well, this would be a ghostly behavior in this classic sense of the word ghost, where we've lost our capacity to have this inner rhythm, this inner timing, listening to the seasons, listening to our bodies. We need different amounts of water every day, right? Depending on what we're doing, depending on how much activity, depending on the weather. So it's just kind of a funny thing that we would rely on something outside of ourselves to know how much water to drink rather than our own listening, our own appetite. So this is a kind of energy and mind confusion, it's not a mental confusion. We try to ameliorate it with like mental calculations, but it's really a somatic experience, the appetite, a somatic kind of knowing of when to drink and when to stop, when to eat, when to stop eating. So where do we learn completion? Like how do we learn this completion cycle, this kind of completion of action? Nature, right? Nature has a lot of this, and listening, and hopefully, there's many places. Hopefully, as children, we let our appetite evolve naturally, or according to our like an inner development of that appetite. That's important with babies to allow them to have this appetite and know when to stop and when to go. So now completion is that we're in the cycle of this chi node of little heat, and next on the weekend we're moving into great heat, which is even more of a cautious time around malignant heat that can flare up and blaze in the system. But, ghosts can do weird things when they're not listening, right? They can keep going, keep doing, keep behaving in ways that are not in accordance with what's actually the nourishment of our destiny, and behave in ways that are out of alignment with our prayer. That's basically ghostly behavior. Actually, maybe we could summarize that as like ghostly behaviors behaving in ways that are not in alignment with our prayer. So completion right now during this chi node and the next chi node is on a roll. It doesn't need more pushing. We don't need to push to complete things. And if we stop pushing, then the summer heat that we may have absorbed during these summer months has the capacity to disperse rather than collecting in our body. So part of the key with us in not pushing the river of ambition during this and next chi node is allowing summer heat to disperse itself so that it doesn't store in our body as latent heat that can then become pathologized later on in the winter as febrile disease or in the autumn as a lung disease. And it's tricky when we're surrounded by ghosts, right? Or people who are mentally ill or having cheat arrangements, because there's a lot of peer pressure, one could say, or environmental pressure, or just kind of consensus culture pressure to keep going and pushing. So it takes a bit of tuning in and really aligning with a deeper prayer to know when to not go along with consensus culture, because consensus culture this time of year is just like, yeah, get the next barbecue, throw it on the grill, get do the next thing, like add more fire to a ready fire, pour gasoline on a blazing fire is basically what's happening in our consensus culture here. You can really feel it in the election process. It's just like mania, right? That kind of, and I don't speak that lightly, or I'm not trying to I'm not trying to make any kind of weird statement about that, but it is a really heart fire condition. It's very easy to get into a state of panic around it. So when there's battles, when there's incursions, when there's genocides, when there's things happening, it's like very easy for us to get caught up in this frenetic energy. Because there's not a lot of suggestions around us to stop. It's like a quiet whisper from yin, like maybe it would be a great time to stop and calm down. So these are chi cycles that are suggesting this conduct, and it takes really tuning into nature to see the way that nature is starting to wrap up. Like the seeds are starting to happen now, right? Like the fruit is starting to happen. Like things are starting to, instead of only just growing, like things are starting to bolt. Have you noticed the bolting? My cilantro is bolting like crazy, but like a lot of things are. The basil starting to already come into flower. It's like, oh, right. It's not like it was a week ago. Like it literally changed. It's like shifting from summer solstice where it was just felt like it was flourishing, flourishing, flourishing. And now I'm seeing the seeds and the buds and the things like that starting to form on the herbs. So we don't need to look for inspiration right now. Like that's kind of a key piece. Spring is really about inspiration and like sprouting and growing. Now is the time to more sit and um, be more carried along by the current of the chi. So the flavor of inspiration right now isn't really evident in nature. And we could, I can see this tendency to want to pathologize that. Like, I'm not feeling super inspired right now. Like, yeah, it's not really the season to feel inspired. It's a season to complete projects. So if we're looking to feel inspired all year long, then that can also be a bit deranging. Does that make sense? So we want to begin to withdraw from talking and thinking too much, to begin to um, have fewer expectations of cognitive speech related running on, going. So if we get very loud, could be helpful to help us find our way to a quiet place right now. And it's tricky. Like it really takes a focused listening in and tuning into the quiet, right? Because yin isn't super loud. It's not like yang where it's like, look at me, look at this flowers, look at this thing. It's just like it's not, yin doesn't do, yin just yields. So you need to really, to align with yin, it takes a yielding. Thank you for tuning in to Alchemy with Bronwyn, this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you live an inspired, heart-centered life by cultivating energetic mastery. We delve deep into how to organize our life force around what matters most. Send me a message. You can do that in the show notes. You'll see a link. Let me know how it went for you. Also, please remember to hit the like button, support button, all the rest of it. And you can support me to make more great content for people everywhere at bronwyn.love. That's BRONWYN.love. All those links are in your show notes. Many blessings, and I hope to tune in with you again soon.